Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build. Stan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. Where are you calling in from? Where's home base for you?
Grand Junction, Colorado, Western Colorado.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Colorado holds a dear place in my heart. Spend a lot of time just growing up as a kid, going there with family. It's such a beautiful state, beautiful environment.
Yeah. I'm fortunate enough to get to live in Western Colorado, kind of the mountainous area. We take full advantage of skiing, hunting, fishing, outdoors. Everything that has to offer. So I like it.
Yeah.
I've been around the world a few times, and it's hard to beat. I'll tell you that. So
yeah. I know it, man. I know it. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear you take advantage. Awesome. So we're going to kick off with your formal introduction. Stanley Stoll served 4 years active duty in the U.S. Army as an airborne combat engineer out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then 1 year with the Colorado Army National Guard in an aviation group. While active, Stan graduated from the Sapper School of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and was deployed to Kosovo in 2001 to 2002 for anti-drug and weapons trafficking and overall peacekeeping alongside NATO troops. Stan graduated the University of Louisville with a bachelor's degree in civil and environmental engineering, and then a master's of engineering degree in structural engineering. Stan worked through college as a project engineer, performing structural designs and evaluating and repairing damaged structures. Upon return to Colorado, Stan joined Knott Laboratory to follow his forensic passion. Through multiple roles in the organization, Stan is now the CEO and oversees all the engineering divisions of the company and has been able to more broadly learn and influence the technology that is used in forensic investigations. Stan enjoys sharing his forensic investigation knowledge and regularly presents at technical and educational seminars. Stan is a board certified diplomat forensic engineer through the National Academy of Forensic Engineers and has worked on thousands of cases as an expert witness. Over the past year, Stan has chaired the Building Assessment Committee for the National Council of Structural Engineers Association, one of the industry's responses to the Surfside condominium building collapse in Miami, Florida. Stan, I really appreciate the technical kind of skills and backgrounds that you have. I'm excited to get to that portion, kind of what you're doing now. But before we get there, we're going to start chronological order. We're going to do a life story. Tell us about where you grew up, what childhood was like, and what led you to service.
Yeah. Grew up in Western Colorado, grew up in Montrose, Colorado, about 60 miles from here, where I am now. Small town, 10,000 people, something like that. Wrestling town, football town. So grew up sports, and that was combat with hunting and outdoors activities. So we always had those battles going on. But grew up brother, sister, on just a fantastic piece of ground where we just had the outdoors to explore. So you go out our back gate and it just extended to Bureau of Land Management land and then onto National Forest. And so you really go out the back gate and you could just get lost for days. So it was a pretty sweet, kind of 80s kid type of upbringing. Go explore, don't get in trouble, carry a 22, it was that type of upbringing. Yeah, so that was all the way through high school, and then joined the Army straight out of high school. Was looking for. Well, I'll let you ask your questions. I'm not sure everything there. So yeah.
Yeah, that was great, man. I mean, I was thinking in my mind, where do I sign up for that childhood experience? That said, though, what do you think? It could be one thing, could be multiple things. Like throughout childhood, what was kind of an impactful moment that made you think and decide, I'm gearing towards service. I want to serve.
Well, just a huge, respect for our country. Love everything about America. So being able to serve in that capacity. I didn't necessarily have, grandfathers or anything like that served directly. Some uncles and things like that, but not grandfathers or parents that served. So I was the first one to kind of step out in that line. I think coming out of high school, I mean, I was very active in sports and wrestling, football, pushing hard on those, training really hard. And by the time I got through high school, it was, let's go do something. Let's go do something different. Let's go explore something. Let's go learn something. Let's go see more than just this small town, Western Colorado. Right. So that's probably, those things are kind of what drove me there, and the challenge, right? The thought of a challenge. The recruiters that I had were fantastic. I thought that they were no, there were no BS. I felt I got what I was told about. And I wanted something hard charging and go after it. And I got there. So it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you start engaging with recruiters like before you actually signed?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Probably, 8 months or a year in
Okay.
advance, talking with them, just learning like what jobs, what different promotional things you could do. So I signed up specifically to go into be a combat airborne engineer.
Hmm.
And that's what I got. Right. And then like the Army College Fund and things like that on top of it. But those specific things is what I went in for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. How did you know, because this is what I'm hearing is a pretty mature process is what I'm getting at, right? So kind of like, how did you know at 17 that you wanted to do engineering, for example?
Well, I didn't know engineering, and specifically as it pertains to my discipline now as a structural engineer, the combat engineers, we were all demolitions, and I
Hmm.
mean it was mostly infantry. You're jumping out of planes. You're just jumping out of planes with explosives, and you're going and breaching things, or breaching things or rebuilding something afterwards. We were on the light side of things in combat engineers, so we did have the guys that would jump out with bulldozers and they'd go repair an airfield. That wasn't me. There was like sister people that did that. We were mostly breaching, so we just got attached to infantry. So it was very,
Hmm.
it was a grunt job, right? Sapper school was the
Hmm.
same thing, like just hard charging, going after it that direction.
Got it. So, I mean, it basically ended up kind of lining up, but you didn't necessarily know that at that
Yeah,
age at 17. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
yeah,
Awesome. So
yeah.
you get to engage with the recruiters. Uh, you're ready now to enlist. Walk us through that process.
Yeah, so by that time, I pretty much knew, all the things I wanted to sign for, and so I on April 20th, 1999. That's a kind of an infamous day in Colorado history. That was a Columbine shooting
Mm.
day, and so I was in Colorado Springs with my recruiter, driving up to MEPS to do final enlistment and all that stuff, and yeah, I mean it was that. I mean, small time kid. I drive over to Denver. I sign up to jump out of airplanes, and I take my first airplane ride back to Montrose, Colorado, after I sign up to jump out of them. So some people did, question me a little bit on, how intelligent this decision might be, but yeah, it was awesome. So
Yeah, an intelligent decision, especially especially easy to say in hindsight, right?
yeah,
No, but yeah,
yeah.
you were definitely on track. Also out of curiosity, because you had that kind of year of like vetting per se what you were going to do. Did you do anything to kind of prepare yourself?
Not really. I mean, just sports, right? Just stayed
Yeah.
active, stayed, in good physical condition, stuff like that, going into it. But I'm coming straight out of high school. I took the summer off
Mm.
and didn't do a ton there, but otherwise, just yeah, running and physical condition. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So walk us through. You get to basic training. Walk us through what that was like for you.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was good. It pushed me. Uh, Kind of what I expect. So it was like one set or own set, something like that. It was one stop unit training or something like that. So you go straight from basic training into your combat engineering field. So I
Mm.
was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri from August through December, and that was both basic training and then going through combat engineering school. And Yeah, I mean, just learn your basics, discipline, and all of those things. Pass the PT test, push on that, learn all the basic skills. Um, and then I don't know. I don't know if there was anything specific that I learned. Just kind of the normal stuff that all of us that go through the military
Hmm.
basic training, pick up. And then it was off, short break for Christmas, and then it was off to airborne school down in Fort Benning, Georgia. Right after that, I think 3 weeks there, and you land in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So, and then they put you to work. Oh, yeah.
So where in that process was combat engineering? Was that at Fort Bragg or was it in between?
That was at Fort Leonard Wood. So that was right
Okay.
on the heels of basic training. So you rolled straight into it. I think there was a small graduation and maybe like a week off or weekend off or something like that. And then you go straight into combat engineering school. So I don't remember how long they were. I mean, it was like 9 weeks, 12 weeks, something like that for
Mm-hmm.
basic training. And then you went straight into 6 or 8 weeks of combat engineering training after that. So
And
something like that.
anything memorable or notable, whatever, from combat engineering training?
Not at that stage because later I went back to Sapper school at Fort Leonard Wood,
Mm-hmm.
and that was where things got real, right? And you really start pushing. So yeah. So not this is also 20 years ago at this point, Adam. So you're pulling out some cobwebs here. So
No, I know. Trust me. Trust me. I know. I can't recall to such details either. So yeah, I appreciate any kind of recollection that occurs in our conversation. All right, cool. So you get through, basic training, combat engineering school. You land at Fort Bragg. What happens there?
yeah, so training. I mean, I progressed through the ranks. I made rank pretty quickly. Just learning the trade, learning combat engineering skills, learning all of our demo calcs, all of that stuff. Um, yeah, jumped out of planes. Got to do a lot of fun missions. A lot of training with some. I mean, great folks. I mean, 80 seconds down there. All the special ops are down there. So I don't know. I think we got a lot of exposure to stuff. We had a lot of jumps during that time frame, and I don't know. I felt very well prepared. 9/11, I was training down in at Fort Polk, Louisiana. It was like a full blown mission. Actually, the 82nd had jumped in down there, and we were doing the counter ops for them, which was just a hoot. I mean, we're going through just picking on these guys that haven't slept in several days, right? You're just small teams coming in and working on them. And then they quickly turned that into 9/11 happened. We're in the field. We don't really know what's we don't really know the impact or what is really going on and things like that. And it's not till we get back to the barracks, I don't know, at least that night before we start to figure it out. And yeah, then it was. I mean, it was a phase of put me in, coach. Like I got all my stuff here to go to war. Like send me. Where are we going?
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the mentality of basically the entire unit. Like especially that day and being we have all of our gear just like we would if we were rolling out. So it was I don't know. It was a unique and interesting time to be in the service and right then, that day.
Mm-hmm.
So but
Yeah. So what was kind of marching orders? Like, did you have any idea of deployment? Was this, anyone telling you anything, generally speaking?
no, I mean everybody was just in reaction mode and trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
the extent of this and um yeah, I mean we ended up it was pretty anticlimactic at that point. We went back to Fort Bragg and just got reestablished with base there and kind of back into a normal routine for a bit. So I didn't end up going to Afghanistan or Iraq. My two sister companies did, Charlie and Bravo. Um, Charlie went to Afghanistan. Bravo went to. They jumped into Iraq with the Rangers on first day. So
Wow.
so some of those guys got their mustard stain, which is our, that's a
Mm-hmm.
combat jump, which there's not a lot of combat jumps in the past, several decades.
Right.
I think Panama was the last one. So I think a lot of Bravo guys got to experience that and go in and secure the Saddam's airfield when they did that part of it. And yeah, for whatever reason, Alpha, we were hanging back, and then so we deployed to Kosovo in '01. Yeah, '01 going into '02.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the latter part of it. So yeah, I guess maybe we were already slotted to go to Kosovo, and so
Right.
that's what provoked us just staying the course, and then Charlie and Bravo went the other directions. So yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
where did Sapper School happen in this time frame?
Sapper school was right after I got back from Kosovo,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah. So it was afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So talk to us about kind of that deployment to Kosovo. What was that like? What were you guys doing there?
Yeah, so that was it was a bunch of NATO troops. French were there. Australian troops were there. I forget everybody, but it was so we were counter drug and counter weapons trafficking was one of the components of it, and so that was going up, basically blowing out the roadways. They're almost like
Mm,
little cheap trails, or that's even generous, but it's where these paths that they were using through the mountainside there between Serbia and Kosovo, and we
mhm,
were going up and blowing those things out. And uh, so it was actual, you're going up and using all the explosives experience that we used and taking out those roadways. And then so there was that part, and then the rest was uh, it was just policing. There was uh, just going through the streets. The Serbians and the Albanians didn't get along at all, and so just the presence of being there and walking around patrolling at night, as a squad in inner city. This town over there called Mitrovica that I remember being in, and there wasn't anything that was real serious that happened. I mean, we ended up with some kids that were playing with fireworks one night. That was, we didn't know what it was. We thought that was our first, like, okay, it's about ready to get real, and it turns out to be kids, and thankfully
mhm,
it's kids playing with
yeah.
fireworks. So
Mhm,
yeah, so the rest of it was just presence and just being that deterrent, if you will, for the arguments and disagreements that were going on and been going on for years in those areas. So
mhm. How is it working with NATO?
um pretty young when I'm deployed there, but
Mhm,
I think some of the superiors had some issues, that were going on, just on who was doing what and
sure.
communication skills and stuff like that, across the countries and forces. Um, from my perspective, there was nothing wrong, but afterwards you kind of hear some rumors about this or that, and maybe it wasn't quite as good as we thought, but for all intents and purposes nothing happened while we were there,
Right.
so that seems good.
Yeah, I was asking kind of, I mean, because of what you said, really, it's hard to imagine how that force with which is naturally already like a, diverse nation, tough to see kind of unified, or just tough to conceive or think of, how they could have like a unified kind of ideology, right? Because
Yeah,
everyone's coming from somewhere different. And then you add, US in the mix as well as an additional external, force to be able to need to cooperate with. So yeah, it's interesting to think about how that ends up working, right? Because there's just a
yeah,
lot of different opinions.
yeah. There was so we did most of the time we were on Camp Bondsteel, and we just kind of ran our own missions. We didn't really know that,
Mhm.
there was others operating in other parts of the country. There was about a month where we spent on a French base up near Mitrovica, or in Mitrovica. That was the French base, and so it was all their control. So then, yeah, that's where things were probably a little more blurry than others. Otherwise, it was just us operating on our own, in this
Right.
one sector. You do this and take care of this, and somebody well above my pay grade was making the other decisions for us. So yeah,
Yeah, I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
And generally speaking, kind of like the pace of that deployment, was it heavy? Was it easy going? What was it like?
Um, I both at
Hmm.
times. Sometimes we were running pretty good. Others, it was, you could have been in America on a base, right? And
Sure.
it was more low key. So I'd say it flexed up and down. We did do some training over there, as well. There was built in time to do some of that. So like one example was we did Sapper stakes, which is it's always a it's always a it's always a training program that we would go through in the States. It was like, 96-hour operations, and you basically don't sleep. You sleep for an hour, every 8 hours type of thing. And
Yep.
so I know I remember doing that over there, which that was in preparation, because I went to Sapper school pretty quick after coming back to the
Mhm.
States. So that was a pretty good training operation. And then I promoted to sergeant in, like, I think I accomplished everything. I don't remember if I got promoted over there or right when I got back, but basically all my boards and all of that stuff were all in Kosovo that we were doing. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah. So anyhow, up and down with training schedule and um, just the pace of the deployment. So,
Hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah. So getting to the end of that deployment, you know, did it last, if you remember, like, did it last the amount of time they told you, or was it extended, changed at all?
it was pretty close. I think we were
Hmm.
about 8 months. It might, and that's about what we intended it to be. There might have been another month or something like that that we stayed over there, but not. It was pretty close to what we anticipated. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. Cool. So get to the end of that deployment, get back to the States. What happens next?
yeah. Sapper schools is right in there. Pretty quick after getting back, within a few months, I believe. I think maybe August. I
Hmm.
got back from deployment maybe April or May, and August was Sapper school. That's a month long, ish, and yeah. So training up for that. Did Sapper school. That that was awesome. I mean, that was a incredible challenge. Push your limits, figure out what you really have inside, right, and and then also just push your technical expertise as a combat engineer. So that was a fun time. Like, I mean,
So
you get beat up, obviously, right?
yeah,
But you learn who you are or who you're capable of being.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. For listeners that don't know, walk us through what Sapper School is, and also, why you went to Sapper School.
Yeah, I mean, I when I set out to do airborne training, airborne combat engineer, I wanted to push. I wanted to see what I was capable of when I joined the army. Sapper school was, our version of ranger school or something similar. I don't want to get in too many arguments over that or anything like that, but it's a good school. It is so it's your explosives training and all of that. So you go through and do a lot of breaching of all kinds of stuff, entry of buildings. We were doing a lot of urban warfare, especially the training had started to shift about that time frame. It seemed like we were doing a lot of
Mhm.
urban stuff, breaching, going in, yeah. So doing explosives on doors and things like that, and then also going in, second, third story entry through windows, either from above or below, so rappelling into those. We did medical evacuations, and so we'd have. I remember um, rappelling off of cliffs with it's not the right word, but a gurney, right? Like a injured party that we were, letting them down off a cliff with and evacuating somebody out. We did water ops, so we had Zodiacs, we had Chinooks out there in the water. We did um, a few jumps, airborne operations. Um, yeah, just the fun stuff, right? Like blew stuff up, ran real missions. Um, we I remember not eating for at least a couple days. Sometimes it seems like forever. And then
Yeah.
miraculously, you show up in a camp that's got chickens and rabbits, right? And so, well, there's your meal. And I think you partnered with your battle buddy and you had your choice of a chicken or a rabbit. I think we had to catch it somehow or something. And we're like, well, which one's bigger? Because we were starving, right? And we went for the rabbit. I think we were told the rabbit had more meat on it, and we couldn't eat it. I mean, that rabbit was huge compared to what we've been eating, and so I don't know, so training like that. There's a 20K. This is one of the fun stories
Mhm.
that I tell my kids is there was I didn't eat cheese when I was a kid, and MREs came with cheese or peanut butter in them in the little packets, right? And this tells you how much I didn't like cheese, but I just got cheese in my MRE one night, and we're just sitting out in the middle. It's like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, shit. And so I bury this cheese in the dirt. I had no idea anybody would ever see me. And basically the instructors were like going around and eat everything in your MRE, right? And they were just hammering people. I'm like, slide this in. It's pitch black out. There's an instructor somehow saw me, right? And I get smoked for 3-4 hours doing little men in the woods out there, just flat ripped until it seemed like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the next day we were up at 4 doing our 20K, which was one of the qualifiers that you had to do your 20K with full ruck and everything in under 3 hours. And there was no way that I was going to let that incident or that smoking not allow me to pass that. And so I was one of 8 people that actually finished under the 3 hours. Missouri is horrendous. It's up and down out there. Is one of the toughest 20Ks I've ever done in my life. But there was no way that I was going to let that little packet of cheese ruin me graduating from this class, right? Anyhow, it was a fun story, but I look back and like that's just like one of those mental toughness things, right? That it's a building point that you can run off of. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story.
yeah.
I'm wondering if your kid's takeaway is we got to eat cheese.
Well, I like it, but yeah, I don't know what they think, but they'll certainly laugh at the story anyhow. So
No, yeah, that's a great one.
yeah.
I was gonna ask like what was a memorable kind of like difficult moment through Sapper school. I'm guessing it was that 20K.
Yeah, yeah, that 20K is rough. That's the most physically challenging component. Especially you do it early to be able to graduate from the class with like the colored, like the full honors or whatever. You have to pass that first time around.
Mm.
There is a second time to come back to it at the end of the course and try to pass it again. And so there was only 8 of us that passed that the first time, or the ruck itself. That was one of the criteria you had to pass. There was more that once you'd been there for the additional 2 weeks, you spend so much time rucking, and you're gaining strength as you go. So there was more people that passed it the second time later in the year. But yeah, that was a great challenge. Land nav course out there was a pretty good challenge as
Mm.
well. And just rocking out across all these different places and finding this. And it's dark or I forget if it goes, I think it goes in, you start late and go into the night. It's either that or you start early and come into the day. But
Mhm.
it's, you're on a tight timeline to get everything done there. So it's the same thing. You're rocking out across some pretty rough terrain, trying to hit these points and get back to where you need to be.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I wonder. You mentioned that more people finish the second time that rock. I'm wondering if a lot of it is also just the like familiarity, understanding, knowing what it was like that first time. That now you could kind of mentally pace and push where you've already experienced that versus the first time it's really unknown. So that's a huge kind of it's a gap in ability to finish is just the pure unknown of things.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's absolutely a factor. And then you have 100, I don't know, 80 to 120 pound pack
Mm-hmm.
on for 2 weeks straight, and now all of a sudden you throw on whatever it was, a 45 pound ruck, I think. Um, all of a sudden that starts to feel light.
Right.
Maybe you move it along a little bit, right? So that would be the other component. Yeah,
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 totally. Totally.
yeah.
Awesome. So you get to the end of Sapper school, you finish, you graduate. What's next?
Um, Graduate, then back to Fort Bragg. There now we get deployed down to Charleston, South Carolina. We're down doing all the security stateside on the ships that are shipping out to Iraq.
Mm.
So yeah, that was basically my engagement with anything Iraq related was just the stateside security. It's a little interesting because you're walking around with a loaded M4, in civilian world, right? I mean, people look at you wow, when you go in to pick up a Coke at the local 7-Eleven, right? Like, but otherwise it was, it was just, it was your standard security stuff
Hmm.
that you were running. They had, divers underneath the ships, and it was tight, and everything. But yeah, so I did that, and then I think that was in it was in late '02 or in '03, and then I ETS'd out in July of '03 after that. So didn't get there. I had a lot of concern. I didn't really care one way or the other, but I just wanted to know the decision because
Hmm.
everybody was shipping out, or a lot of people were shipping out. So there was people that were getting, I'm spacing the word, but stop state or whatever it is, where not letting you exit out.
Hmm.
And I don't know. Somehow I exited, finished that, and headed off into the next venture. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah. I see what you're saying. It's interesting, how they, I guess, decide who, is going to, who they'll allow release and who they won't.
yeah.
Is what, yeah, it's kind of what you're bringing up. What was happening in that, I don't know, time frame, that headspace of finishing? Like, what was your consideration, feelings, decision process like?
Yeah, it was tough because I mean we were looking at a lot of things going on in the world at that time. So I knew that within the next year I would be headed out if I stayed,
Hmm.
and was being offered, promote whatever to reenlistment contracts and things like that. And so you're getting pulled two ways. It's one is, well, I did my contract. I fulfilled what said I was going to do. I'm I was already I was already enrolled in college, right? Like
Mm.
starting to think about that next phase of my life, but simultaneously I've grown with these guys, and I was a sergeant at that point, had my team, and certainly didn't want to bail on those guys going through this. And we just didn't have anything immediate uh, that we were rolling out. I was like, okay, well,
Right.
just kind of set my target and mindset. Wasn't necessarily gonna bicker or anything like that if they stopped me and said, hey, you got to go whatever to Iraq. But yeah, just kind of kept an open mindset. I was focused on the next phase of life, and headed to college and ETS and out, but wasn't going to complain if I needed to stay. Right.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that all makes sense. I want to take kind of like a somewhat step back and talk about getting sergeant rank and having a team. What was kind of that, especially now in hindsight, right? What was that kind of process or shift like for you, if you can remember, just broadly speaking, even, of going from kind of less to no responsibility to now all of a sudden responsibility of having a team, under you.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, obviously, like great pride, right? Like, um, I mean, now I can express it as, almost like a fatherhood type of,
Mm.
mentality. Like these are my guys, right? Like I'm going to take care of them no matter what that is, whether that's stateside during training and we're pushing to make sure everybody's, maxing out their PT test, or it's yeah, shooting or knowing our stuff, like just kind of pushing everybody to be better for
Mhm.
that on the state side, or whether you're making decisions overseas, um, in some situation. I think so. There's the pressure of it. I think that there's also, there's the pride in getting to that point. Um, I mean, kind of hitting all the targets and excelling uh, on your way through. Max out the PT test and do all these things to excel both physically, with combat arms and uh, marksmanship,
Mhm.
and then also in leadership components, and then in technical capabilities, right? So knowing all the things that I need to know for an airborne combat engineer, from demolitions to all the stuff that we need for all of our, jumping out of planes and land navigation and so forth. And so, um, yeah, so I'd say like a lot of pride looking back on that and saying, that peers had pushed you up through and approved you being promoted to see that leadership capability in you, at least in an infancy, that they want to grow that, right? And are willing to trust you with a team of other combat engineers. When you're, everything's amazing when you're in the service because you do all this. I mean, this is when I'm 20 to 22 years old, right? Like you don't get that kind of opportunity many places outside of the military,
Yeah.
to have that level of responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, a lot of pride.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I realized kind of as we were, getting to, when you finish your service, or at least an active duty service. And I was realizing, I also don't ask this question enough. And I think a lot of veterans will kind of pass over that fact, right? Like, you're actually really a kid, but you have pretty significant responsibility in managing people and everything that goes around managing people in that environment, right? In military setting, which is very high stakes, right? Especially in relativity to civilian life. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to kind of highlight that for yourself and for others to hear and realize, okay, yeah, you actually started this trajectory of kind of, responsibility and leadership already at that age. So it's really cool.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
Awesome. So I guess the last thing I was going to ask now, as we're closing out, as you're getting ready to finish service here, is you mentioned you were already enrolled in undergrad. How did you know to do that, or think of doing that in service?
Um, well, I mean, that was, I went in and signed up to go do something hard charging, but I didn't think that I would be, spend a career. I didn't necessarily know for sure, but wanted to go do something fun, push the limit, serve my country and all that stuff. But, also acquired, signed up with the Army, whatever, the Army College Fund at that time.
Hmm.
And, so that was always sitting there, and that just kind of seemed like the path that was going to happen, right? And so
Yeah.
a couple years in, I mean, I had some really good buddies that were really smart, and much more studious than I was, and they just kind of pushed me in a little bit of education stuff with reading and some different books and thought processes and things like that. And so with those, then we just transitioned um, into um, yeah, I knew I was going to college. I didn't know what I was going to college for.
Hmm.
And that was still yet to be determined, as I progressed through, the last year of service. So anyhow, sorry, my phone was buzzing, distracting. But if I answer that question.
Yeah, yeah, you absolutely did. Yeah, it's just interesting it's good to see and hear, right? Because a lot of people will finish and then have no plan and nothing to do, which ends up being naturally so kind of a heavy or negative or whatever word you want to use there, transition process, because you have you know no goal and no responsibility in kind of a bad way, and shifting from heavy responsibility, right? So that's kind
Yeah.
of why I asked, is to bring to light kind of the thought process there and how you got to that decision.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was started, I mean, that was started months in advance, to where I was enrolled in
Hmm.
college right after getting out, right there. I didn't take a break in that. I didn't necessarily know exactly what I was going to major in or any of those things, but I knew I was going to start.
Yeah,
Which just the first year of college is, you're taking general education classes anyhow. So start with something. I mean, my major changed 3 times.
hmm,
Afterwards. But the fact was, I knew I was headed that direction. I just didn't know exactly what it was going to be yet.
yeah,
So that's what I would encourage
yeah,
folks. It's like, just
yeah,
just start. So yeah,
yeah. Plus, you get to take advantage of uh, you know uh, payments against school. So that's definitely worth taking advantage of.
yeah,
Awesome. So you separate, you finish service, you
yeah,
start school. What
yeah,
is kind of the general process like for you in transitioning military to civilian?
yeah. Weird. Um, Yeah, I mean, so low speed, right? I mean, everything was
Hmm.
high speed military, high speed, low drag. Everything was now very calm, and people. It was interesting getting into that world where there wasn't this extreme pressure, there wasn't extreme discipline, there wasn't these, jump up at 2 a.m. and go do a field training exercise, or you think you're going to be back at 10 and you arrive back at 6 a.m., right? Like the unknown of the military and the demands of that, those went away, and now all of a sudden things are kind of simple and easygoing, and that took a bit to kind of get used to.
Hmm.
Just settling down to a lower speed of pace, and I don't know. I mean, in the army, that wasn't necessarily a good thing if you're sitting there idle, right? Like
Right.
going. And so this had a little more idle time to it, and it's like, I don't know. So that was certainly the initial phase of of transitioning back to college, straight out of the army.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, on like a hindsight kind of advice perspective, what you would have told your younger self at the time, aka other veterans going through a similar scenario, and this could be broad, right? It could be extending till whatever period, till today, for example. What kind of advice would you give to support that process, to do that process a little simpler, easier, faster, quicker, whatever word?
Yeah. I mean, it's I would say have some start date, a line before you ever leave. Make sure that you do have that. You know exactly where you're going to head, and there's a target for that. And then I think it's fine to take some time and relax and kind of reflect on things, and then start to prepare yourself for the next chapter. I think that integrating something, um, like maybe train for a marathon, or train for whatever, something that matches the physical fitness side
Hmm.
of that, because that goes away. It goes away, and then that's a big space for um, obviously the physical fitness components, and taking care of your body, but also just stress reliever, and it's a norm of your life. And if you just drop that, like, it's I don't know. I think I would probably try to stay more engaged with that and have something physically oriented. Maybe, I mean, sports in college, or yeah, hunting, fishing, or a marathon, or an Ironman. Anything that kind of matches your goals, but give you something to kind of work on and start to head towards afterwards. Because
Yeah.
I think that you can sit there. I spent too much time. I had too much time on my hands, and I didn't do anything
Right.
wrong, but I could have been more productive during that time frame and made it easier to transition within those. And a physical component would have been a nice piece to add in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I think it's having purpose, or purpose driven, goal driven,
Yeah,
create some dynamic around fitness, as you pointed out. That'll help a lot, so that it's not just a complete smack stop, and shift in life and what you're used to day to day. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
good point. Well said.
yeah,
Good advice.
yeah. And like going from Sapper school and trying to accomplish that 20K, the mental just to push your body, you don't have that anymore, uh, in most jobs in the civilian world. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. So you're going through your first degree, and you mentioned switching programs a few times for forgetting the right term. They're major a few times.
Yeah.
So what happened that was like the aha moment that you realized, okay, engineering is for me?
Um, well, real quick. So I started in law enforcement. That seemed to be like a natural
Mm.
coming uh, out of the service. And then I like numbers. I've always been good at math and stuff like that. So that law enforcement just wasn't, it wasn't technical. It wasn't anything. I was like, well, I'll try accounting. That's numbers. No, that was not the right kind of numbers. And so then switched again to like more, especially like physics based classes that's where I got in and said that was the overlap with my skills growing up. I built homes and stuff like that through high school before
Mm.
service and on breaks. And that's what I did after service during summer breaks. And so that was the analytical side of the practical things that I really enjoyed just working with my hands. And so it just took finding those pieces and figuring out how engineering related to, construction and so forth, that I was like, okay, this is right. And my wife and I actually transferred. I did 2 years in Western Colorado, and then we transferred to Louisville, Kentucky, for an engineering program specifically. And and then those, like I wasn't a great student coming through high school, the early parts of college. Anything that I was interested in, I did extremely well in.
Mhm.
And so for me, like as soon as I hit those engineering classes, now all of a sudden I can get straight A's. I am not a straight A student, right? This just fit my wheelhouse, and I was interested in it, and I was able to. Now I study all night long. Like I'm not the smartest kid in the class. But I do have a hell of a work ethic and a
Mhm.
mental toughness that I will make sure that I know my stuff, right? And so it was yeah. So all of that was just getting to, something that I was passionate about, I liked, I excelled at, and enjoyed, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like how you kind of broke that down, thought about something you liked, right, as a theory, principle, whatever, which was math, numbers, and then you kind of took that path toward finding what you actually enjoyed doing. So that's also really good advice that I've heard a few veterans speak about is, figure out what you like, what you're good at, and kind of, navigate in that kind of direction, which is exactly, sounds like exactly what you did. So did you roll from undergrad right into your master's?
Yeah,
Mhm.
went hand in hand. So
Awesome.
just didn't stop. So
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, listen, it's better. I came out of undergrad and then went back and did a master's, and it was brutal because, like you, right? I'm not a student person and school kind of a person, so getting back into that headspace is not easy. So you
yeah,
did the right move.
yeah, stick with it. Have that next thing already started before, so you don't even have time to
Yeah,
stop and think, right? Yeah,
exactly, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Awesome. So you finish your master's also same school, right?
yeah. The University of Louisville. Yep.
Awesome. And then, if I remember correctly, you moved back to Colorado.
Yeah, I worked through college, so I got that experience. Worked for a structural engineering firm there in
Mhm.
Louisville, and worked just a little bit longer. Then moved back to Colorado, and I came back. Interesting, during this time phase of my life, I came back to Denver, and this is in 2008 and 2009. That's when we had our housing crisis and all that. So you really couldn't get a job in structural engineering at that time.
Mhm.
So I went back to my military roots and did security. I worked graveyard shifts I worked there for a year, downtown Denver, graveyard shifts, like checking doors, you know, telling homeless people to kind of move along, not on this property, that type of stuff. Um, and it's a little bit humbling, right?
Yeah.
Graduated with a master's degree in engineering and can't get a job. So worked that, which the looking in rears, this is the cool part. So during that time frame, I just started listening to audiobooks.
Mm.
It was getting them through the library at the time. There's some sort of rental program. Now there's Audible and all this stuff, so it's fantastic. But so I listened to business books like nonstop. One earbud in, walking around, checking doors and all this stuff, and did that for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, through the graveyards, whatever, it's like 10 to 6 or something like that, and felt like I got, a business degree, not a true business degree, but just learned a ton from all of these
Yeah.
business books that I listened to during that time frame. And then when I'm obviously applying for jobs like this whole time, and when I finally got hired at Knott Laboratory, which is where I work now, I'm just starting with a whole nother kind of skill set, right? And many of those books, they tie in so much with military. I mean, military leadership stuff is fantastic. Then just figure out the language to apply that to the business world. It's all the
Mhm.
same stuff. It's just a slightly different language, right? I look back at the language that we use in the military, and it was all acronyms. And now I'm like, ooh, 20 years ago, what are those? Right? It takes a second, but they're all transferable to
Mhm.
this world. So anyhow, after school, yeah, back to Denver, security job, and Audible books was my life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, huge amount of respect and appreciation for kind of your ability to, like you said, just be humble, take the job, take what you can during that time, during that downturn, figure it out. Make use of that time. To your point, listening to business books, which I think is an audio, right? Which I think is an awesome tool.
yeah.
Um, and I guess that segued you right into kind of the path that you're in today. So walk us through that, starting at Knott and what that was like.
Yeah, so Knott Lab is a forensic engineering firm, and I didn't really know what forensic engineering was. It sounded cool. I just wanted to, I just wanted to work on existing infrastructure. I developed while I was in college and working for that previous firm. I really enjoyed working with existing buildings. They were just harder. It wasn't like a blank slate. Nothing's straight. And there's so many more variables, and the materials, concrete started to deteriorate and things like
Mm,
that. So it just made it complex, and it made it fun because every single one had a different way of looking at it, right? So anyhow, so forensic engineering is early in my career is basically a lot of assignments are for insurance companies. They hire you to go look at something and say,
mhm,
what caused this and what are the contributing factors, and something like that. And so that just became, it really is the providing the forensic side. So just using your engineering skill set to and doing a forensic investigation. So uh, just an investigator, right? Like, well, what are all the circumstances that could have come together to create this situation, and how do you rule them out? And generally, we're using some sort of engineering skills, calculations, or something like that to rule those out and to come in on your conclusions for it. And so it was a lot of insurance investigations. Then we would repair buildings. So insurance investigate. I mean, some of the fun ones are like, we passed in the state of Colorado, passed the marijuana, whatever, like not medical, but recreational bill
right.
pretty early on, right? And so we end up with marijuana shops and stuff like that around the state, and somebody drives a car into the building because they want to get the marijuana out of this place, right? Well, their car falls into the basement when they drive it in, so they can't get out, right? And so anyhow, these are some of the funny stories. But by example, we would go and assess that structure and the extent of damage that was caused by it, and then how do you repair it, right? And so you
Mhm,
start repairing it. And sometimes it's huge damage. I mean, some are explosions, right, that take off and take buildings off, like natural gas leaks or something like that
mhm.
explode, and some are huge like that. Earthquakes. I haven't done a ton of earthquakes, but tornadoes I've done a lot of,
Oh
and
wow.
and then some are just, I mean, all the way down to like hail damage and wind damage on structures and something like that. So yeah, you're just
Well,
applying your education knowledge to some investigation.
mhm. What does tornado damage look like for a property?
Yeah. Well, it's not the ones like through the path, right? Nobody needs it. You don't need me to tell you that the tornado was,
Right.
and there's no structure. It's, if you think about it, it's like go to Oklahoma, and it's the ones that were exposed to 130-mile-an-hour winds that weren't right in the direct path, but their roof lifted off and it came back down, or they
Wow.
lost
Yeah.
part of it, or the building is leaning now and it wasn't before. And some of that stuff that an insurance company will ask you to look at is, well, what was existing before? Because they only owe per their policy for the damage caused by the tornado, but not that the building is 100 years old and it's got extreme differential movement. It's settled over those years. They don't owe for the foundation movement that existed before it, right? Or at
Mhm,
least most insurance companies want to know that line. So they'll be asking you, and you're trying to figure out, well, how do you differentiate what caused this movement that was pre-existing versus this huge wind event that came through
Mhm.
a mile away. Right. So anyhow,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, those are crazy circumstances that you mentioned between, driving a car through a storefront or a tornado. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely interesting.
Yeah.
When in this kind of time frame, whether it was when you were doing security or when you started at Knott, did you enlist in the National Guard?
So I did that right out of the service.
Okay, yeah.
So I did that simultaneously to coming back to Colorado and starting college. At the time, the National Guard had a try one program. So they were trying to get as many people in active to, okay, well, transition just part-time. Don't fully
Hmm.
transition out. And so I did that for a year. And I was at Buckley Air Force Base over in Denver, but I was traveling from Grand Junction over there, whatever, the 1 week a month and the 2 weeks of the year. And that was rough. Like you're driving through, and that's mountain range between us. So you're driving through their snowstorms, leave at 3 in the
Yeah.
morning, drive over. I'm not quite as hard charging at this point in my life as I was, 2 years earlier. And the other thing was, so I wanted to be a pilot my whole life, which I just recently finished my pilot's license, but I had to do it outside of school. I just
Congrats, man.
literally,
Amazing.
thank you. It's like 6 months ago. I finally accomplished that goal, but
That's
I
awesome.
went into it with the intention of trying to fly in the service. And then at that point, the National Guard it just wasn't as hard charging. It wasn't what I was used to, being combat arms.
Hmm.
And then I was starting to really start to transition towards studying academically, right, and pushing into my academic career. And so that it was just hard to align. And so yeah, so I just did the 1 year, finished that out, and then fully uh,
Yeah.
divested from the military. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. So then back to kind of where we, took that step back from. So mid-career or not at this point. Talk to us a little bit about, starting out as a entry level position and growing into a leadership role.
yeah, I mean, so it looks very similar to starting as a private, right, in the service and growing to a sergeant. You are simultaneously gaining technical expertise and the ability to train others in your field. So you're developing as a technical expert in your field, and then also with ideas and aspirations to move into leadership and managerial responsibilities within the organization. Um, Applying those same leadership rules, right? Like, I mean, there's so many things that cross over as far as like one of my favorite books. I know you asked books, it's probably one of your last questions, but Leaders Eat Last, right? Is one of my favorite
Mm.
books. And if you haven't read it, you got to read it, like especially for military folks. And
Mhm.
it's just this mentality that no, I'm going to take care of my troops. Well, in private sector, you're just going to take care of your teammates or your subordinates, or you're going to help your manager. You're going to stay longer and make sure that project gets taken care of. And it's just so you just start out by showing leadership through those opportunities, and then you start pull other people along, teach them. Like the whole idea of good leadership is that like that you know high tide rises all ships, right? Like pour into your peers, help them be better. And that's my perspective of leadership.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily that there's a difference between managers and leaders, especially in the civilian world, in my mind. And I think managers can have a negative connotation of you've been put there maybe undeservingly, right? Not necessarily, not all the time, but like as opposed to a leader, you are, you're pulling others along, and if you succeed, great, or if you have success, great, but you're not doing it on the backs of others, right? You
Mhm.
are pulling everybody along. So during that, yeah. So I mean, I just continue to lean into and push and put the time into um, the products and the investigations that I was doing, and to make those the best that I could. And then and then just kept pushing the processes that we were doing as an organization to make the entire organization better. Right.
Mhm.
That was that phase of life anyhow.
Yeah, I like how you separated managers and leaders. It is funny. I think managers do just like that word has kind of like a negative or some sour kind of a interpretation in your brain. At least I know that happened to me. What I thought of was like micromanaging, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, leader is certainly a different word for a reason. So yeah, I like how you broke out those two things, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. You started talking about, and you touched on a little bit as we're going through your story, is translatable skills, military to civilian profession. So I want
Yeah.
to kind of take a moment to really just uh, highlight specifics, translatable skills.
Yeah. It's when you're coming out of the service, you're really trying to figure that out, right? What in the world can I mean, I've grown up in the military with an M4 and C4. Like, what am I going to do with C4 explosives and an M4 rifle outside of this, other than like police or, some other type of, similar service? Um, that takes a minute, right? I
Mhm.
think in kind of preparation and kind of reflection of for this conversation, um, it's those other skills. Like, think outside of the tools that you've actually used and how you've applied that. Think along the lines of, well, I know discipline, I know hard work, I know how to push myself, I know mental toughness. Apply that to the next thing. Like, um, whatever it is, you got to find out, figure out something that's innate. When I'm mentoring others, or people ask me about their kids that they're about ready to graduate high school and they want to pursue engineering or they want to pursue anything, I'm I'm always just trying to tell them to reflect upon, hey, what do you like to do? Like, I'm a big person of, like, if you choose something that you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. Like, and that's pretty true for me, and I hope that many others are able to do that. But think through how to find, something that is innate to you that you can enjoy, and not just the task, but the actual work environment. If you're an outdoors person, you can't stand being at a desk. Engineering might not be your gig. Like, sometimes, there's certain fields of engineers that you're going to spend a lot of time at a desk. And that,
Mhm.
I chose forensics, where I spend a lot of time away from my desk, or I used to anyhow. Um, but that was intentional.
Mhm.
It was to get me out of the office, where I wasn't just doing calculations. I was actually going out and seeing things in the field. And so anyhow, things like that, figure out your passion, and then use the mindset, the discipline, those things to go learn it. I mean, studying for grad school was my wife went to bed at 8 o'clock, 8:30 or something like that. And that's when I turned the desk light on and study till midnight, 1 o'clock. Right. And it's the same mental toughness that it took to do the damn 20K, that it is to finish and actually, make sure you understand the material, for the next test or whatever it is. So that's what I would say is just think about those kind of quote unquote soft skills that you've
Mhm.
learned and have been, just impressed upon your mind all the way through the military service. Those are the things that you just apply them in a different manner.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. I like how you pointed out before, and I 100% agree, is kind of separate yourself from the equipment, like the literal day-to-day things that you're touching, separate yourself from that for a second and think about kind of the core principles of what you're applying and the overarching kind of, you know, purpose of your service. And that's, mental toughness, fortitude,
Yeah.
being able to just day in, day out, do what you need to do. And as you applied it to your story, right? Whether that was, studying for your graduate degree, whether it was figuring out that, oh yeah, you want to be outside a little bit more and follow that path. And that led you to where you're at today. So that's awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
Awesome. So I think we sorted through, your civilian professional career. Do we miss anything? You want to add anything on that front?
Well, just like the next step would be
Hmm.
going from that mid-level management to owning this company. And that was nothing more than just the same things, just repeat. So
Right.
now learn how to buy a business, now learn how to finance a business and all of those things. And it's the exact same thing. Just apply it to a new topic and go on. And then I'd say the other component that we focus on, my business partner and I focus on a lot at our organization, is just true leadership, like true good leadership, true caring for your team members, your subordinates, and so forth. And it's thrown around in our culture today, but culture of an organization, and that is at its essence, it's just taking care of and having a true kind of a true compassion and a true care for those people that you're with, right? And so anyhow, it just goes back to that same thing you asked me that first question about being a
Mm.
sergeant or whatever. It's just taking pride in the position of where you are, and taking the time to acknowledge kind of the appreciation for being put in that position, and then being able to pour into those subordinates, peers, whatever, so that you're pulling up on them. And so, like, I would just add that, because that's like full transition to the job that I
Mm.
have now. It's just a bigger organization, more people, and now there's intermediate leaders in our group that I need them to pour into their people just as much as I care about them, right? And because I can't do it for the entire organization. It has to be built into the organization as a whole. It has to be in the core to be able to push all the way down, whatever, 3, 4, 5 tiers, right? Like,
Hmm.
so anyhow, that would be the last thing I'd add to that piece.
Yeah, well said, man. I really appreciate that perspective. In terms of when people think about culture, what is culture, how to implement it. I really appreciate how you put it. It's simply to say, just care about the people you're leading, care about your team, and you'll therefore create right culture will follow. So that's
Yeah.
a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So moving on to the last two questions, we'll start with book. Any book or books you'd like to recommend? Since you already mentioned one, you could repeat that and add to it if you'd like.
Yeah. So you asked me that question. I had to write a couple down. I've read a lot. In reading, gosh, like, just go read, guys. There's so much material out there. Find something you like. But Leaders Eat Last is fantastic for military
Mm.
guys. You will absolutely know it, understand it, and it's a great application to the civilian world and to private organizations. Um, Outliers, I love that book. It's Maximum Gladwell. It just talks about kind of just how people get to where they are, how those really good people, how the Beatles became the Beatles, and just some of those things. That's a fun
Mm.
book that I've read. A business book is The E Myth Revisited. That's probably the one of the core books that I started with. If you're interested in business, it's a great step. And then the other one that's really related to military, most people will like this, and you can use this. You can use this in your family. You can negotiate with your kids. You can negotiate with your spouse. Tread carefully on that, but it certainly works in just everyday business interactions and so forth. But it's Never Split the Difference by Chris
Mm.
Voss, and he's a CIA guy. Do you know it, Adam? Do you know
Yeah, I
that book?
think I think it's FBI, right? FBI.
Maybe it's FBI. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, FBI, but interrogator, right?
yeah,
And
FBI interrogator. Yep.
yeah, and applies that. Now he teaches all over, teaches all these
Mm.
private sector business world, but his examples are in FBI interrogations, and he applies that to some business negotiations, and it is phenomenal. Like the interactions and the way that he presents that material, it's hard to believe that those things are associated or could be associated, but they are absolutely. It's a fantastic read, anyhow. So
Yeah, agreed.
those are
That book I know, and it is awesome. It's really interesting. The others sound awesome. Definitely adding them to my list, and they're going to be in the show notes. So I guess we're here in the last question to close out is your wellness practice. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I could certainly do better in that state. I'm a spiritual guy, love Jesus, and so I'm doing my Bible studies and that stuff on a regular basis from that perspective. Otherwise, it's outdoors as much as I can. I
Mhm.
need to do better in this area, but hunting, fishing, um, those are my gigs when I'm not here. So certainly could do better in that area, but do okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I'm right with you there in terms of needing to get outside a little bit more. Does that fluctuate for you for summer, winter?
Yeah, yeah. I can train
Yeah.
really hard. I can actually train for hunting season through the summer, which sounds silly. And my wife will be. That's your reason. That's what's going to encourage you to get out there. Yeah, it is. But yeah, winter gets difficult, short
Yeah.
hours, and cold, hard to get outside as much, and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's certainly easier to be out in the summer for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same. So I was
Yeah.
curious if you get there too.
Yeah.
Do you hunt though?
I do. Yeah. As much as I
It's
possibly
awesome.
can. So, yeah, my
Awesome.
son hunts now, and we just spent, yeah, 2 weeks ago, we just spent a ton of time hiking all over the mountains. Didn't have success with him, but I don't know. It's great being outdoors, pushing kind of the limits. It's tough. So it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Regardless if you catch anything, I mean, you're outside in beautiful atmosphere, so can't complain either way.
Yes. Yeah. 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 And you're with I mean, we hunt with family and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
you take it out hunting. It's a, a great joy. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. Well,
Yeah.
listen, really appreciate you jumping on to share your story. I know I learned a lot. Got some books I got to catch up on from your recommendations. Thanks so much for joining the show, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. Bye, everyone. See you soon. Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build.